to talk about the mystery of tax havens and how this gets cleared up is the editorial director of Newsmax Financial Newsletters, Jeff Yasteen. Jeff, we welcome you back to America's
Thank you,
Forum.
JD. Thank you, Francesca.
Just to ask, how feasible do you think this latest plan from the OECD is?
I think it's very feasible. To me, it's a continuum of what we've already been seeing with other developments. I mean, a couple 3 years ago, we saw where the federal government had gone after several Swiss banks and gotten big settlements out of them, and that was part of this sort of breaking down of historic bank secrecy laws in Switzerland. So to me, this is just sort of one step that we're moving along on. The bigger thing, JD, and it's probably the question you're going to go to next, is Holder and the DOJ as far as prosecuting for the too big to fail U.S. banks and those sorts of things, because they've really been under pressure there.
Well, they've been under pressure there, but I take a look at the Swiss. So I almost joked about their neutrality yesterday on another subject, just historically, where Switzerland fits into this. But in a broader sense, what has taken so long? Is it just this being very unique to those sovereign states and they don't want to surrender these things, or the complications of international law and tax policy lead to, I guess, a need to very carefully write proposals and proposed regulations?
I think it's one of those deals where, just like in this country, as soon as you have some sort of an IRS situation where they come out with a ruling, well, of course, then people are going to try to find a way around it. I think that's really, at the end of it, that's all this is. You're seeing efforts by the various groups that are trying to, circumvent, the wire transactions, et cetera, and the government's looking for ways to rein that in. The OECD and these bigger efforts to rein in Singapore and Switzerland are part of that.
Jeff, would you say that Singapore and Switzerland have succumbed to foreign pressures from governments?
Oh, most definitely, most definitely. I think it's one of those things where we're really looking at the federal government putting pressure on them, and they've been doing this for years. That's what I was saying, as far as they've been after the Swiss, the various Swiss banking authorities to do this for quite some time. So I don't see this as any big change. It's just one more step towards having, for better for worse, a very integrated taxation and information sharing system, which you can see the good things and the bad things coming out of that.
Before we change subjects, just one question. It interests me, with money and the attraction of money, not everybody signed on to this treaty. Do you have in your mind any nation that becomes the next tax haven outside of the treaty? Because somebody's surely going to try to take on this revenue in business, are they not?
You would think there's 60 nations that have signed on to it. So undoubtedly there's going to be some sort of a small island country of some kind that's going to be looking to do this. But again, the key is how they have to withstand the pressure as well. And no country can really exist unto itself, in the banking system that way. They have to be integrated into it. Otherwise, they become more or less a financial pariah, the same way Iran and Sudan and other places like that are.
Eric Holder, being so assertive on this, with the sharing of this information, as sensitive as it is, does this raise new security questions in terms of what we've seen with hackers and consumer accounts in the United States? Could this be written exponentially larger in the framework of this treaty?
I suppose that could well be the case. I mean, certainly, I think any hacker, as the hacking community has proven, has been able to access the deepest secrets in any sort of corporate entity and a great many governmental entities. So certainly, that's something that you have to be concerned about as well.
Well, now let's turn to another story, and it reminds me of a story I used to hear about as a kid. The Alibaba Group, perhaps the world's largest e-commerce company, opened its books to the public, revealing record profits. This Chinese company's revenue grew at an extraordinary 57% in the first 9 months of the fiscal year 2013 and earned $1.3 billion on $3 billion in revenue, a rise of 110% and 66% respectively versus 2012 levels. Statements made public as the company filed with the Security and Exchange Commission to raise $1 billion here in the United States. Economists are predicting it could well surpass Facebook's $16 billion generated in its IPO of 2012. Now, despite Alibaba having far less revenue than American counterparts like Google, eBay, and Amazon, investors are very excited about how much profit it does earn, especially as those profits have doubled in consecutive years.
Jeff, do you think we should all be investing in Alibaba?
I don't think so. There's a reason why Alibaba is listing here as opposed to, they tried to list in Hong Kong, but Hong Kong financial authorities did not like the sort of opaque nature of their reporting requirements, and they didn't like the fact that the way the structure of the board is, they can't actually have as independent of a board, representing not just the company insiders, but also the shareholders. In this country, quite often somebody doesn't like the way a company is being run. They buy a 5 or 10% stake. They agitate to the board of directors to put 1 or 2 of their own people on there, and they go from there. You can't do that with Alibaba.
So corporate governance in the West and the United States takes a backseat to the government policy in what is still a communist nation, even though so many free trade enthusiasts say, oh, look at China, they're going into market-based systems. So these philosophical disagreements and really communist doctrine works against Alibaba on the international stage.
But it does. You can certainly argue that, but remember, they did actually succeed in getting, or will be succeeding in getting a listing in this country. It's just a matter of when that IPO actually comes off.
Well, and that leads to the question, can this growth be sustained?
I don't think so. And I have to tell you, whenever you see a company that has 80% market share, as Alibaba does when it comes to the consumer to consumer retail market, and they have a big chunk of the business to consumer retail market in China, you just have to wonder how much more can they really grow. The other key is Alibaba is really more, their dominance is in the PC area. China is where we were about 4 or 5 years ago in terms of mobile usage. Data has been very expensive, so data plans and all that, people have been reluctant to do that. But now we're getting a lot more smartphone incursions into the Chinese market, and mobile usage favors a couple of different companies. One's called Tencent, Tencent.com, and they're pairing up with another company, Chinese, called JD.com.
Oh, I like that name of that company, if it's the way I spell